All right. Now, in this lesson, in the last lesson we were talking about the Peloponnesian War and all the tensions and preparations and the build-up for it. The Delian League versus the Peloponnesian League. Delian League is basically the Athenian Empire at this point. The Peloponnesian League is basically a Spartan Empire. They're both the ones kind of taking control of things. Everybody else is joining up because, well, it's just a matter of convenience and just what is best to do at the moment. Not that they like Athens versus Sparta. It's just like who you hate least type of situation. And then there's this overall fear of Persia that just is always in the background as well. And so we talked about all of that in the last lesson, and we got to the point of just how the Peloponnesian War starts. And we talked about, what Athens did to Thassos, and then how Sparta manipulated Milos, and then Athens destroyed Milos, and then Sparta declares war against Athens, and then you have this massive, I can't really call it a civil war because they never really were that together in the first place, but you definitely have this major war that's involving pretty much all of the Greek world in just one big kaboom. And this war goes on for 30 some odd years, I think, like 30, 31, 32, 30 years. And we're going to talk about that now, just what happens in the war, how this goes down. So, first off, Pericles, man, he did a good job thinking about how he's going to basically deal with stuff. That Piraeus wall worked perfectly. The Spartans came up. They laid siege to Athens. It didn't work. They tried to assault the walls. The Athenians easily shoved them off. And so then the Spartans just settled in for a long siege, but it did nothing because the Athenians had command of the sea. They had the big navy. They kept bringing in food shipments. Their people were just fine. And Pericles then Pericles, now the leader of Athens, starts up what I like to call, this is my phrase, at least I think it's my phrase, and maybe I got it from someone else, a pinprick strategy. This is the same strategy that the Greeks used against the Persians, where they would drop off a raiding party, destroy a bunch of stuff, and then before the enemy army or the Persian army could retaliate, they'd get back on the Greeks would get on the ships and leave. Athens now does this to Sparta, and it's even worse because what do the Athenians do? They don't just go down and just land somewhere on the Peloponnesian Peninsula or up above Thebes or something like that and just raid the ground and just destroy farms and things like that and then leave. Especially with Sparta, they go down there, they destroy stuff, and they bring weapons to the Helots, and they try to incite Helot rebellions, which does happen. And the Spartans actually have to come down and start dealing with this armed Helot rebellion. They wanted to make sure not to give their Helots any weapons, but now the Athenians are giving them weapons. And so they're trying to lay siege, they're trying to deal with Helot rebellions. Sparta is actually the point where okay, we bit off more than we can chew. We're going to need to give up here. And Athens is feeling pretty good about themselves, like, we're about to win this one. The strategy worked great. Well done, Pericles. We definitely are the best there is. And then fate kind of comes into play. Right as Sparta is ready to start saying, okay, let's have peace talks, something that Spartans do not want to do. You don't want to admit that you lost type thing if you're Sparta. One of the grain shipments brings in the plague. And this is where the wall becomes a bad thing now. That Piraeus wall becomes a bad thing now for the Athenians because it keeps the plague in it. It doesn't spread out to the soldiers on the outside of the wall, but it stays inside and hits the citizens. It's believed that 1/3 of the Athenian population dies of this plague. They're devastated now. So both sides are doing really bad. And they both agree to a temporary peace, like a 10-year peace. Let's both build up, and we'll go back at it in 10 years. And they stay somewhat true to that. At least they don't attack each other directly, as in like Athens versus Sparta, our city-states. Well, I can't really say that. They do, but I'll explain. They agree to this 10-year truce. But Athens recovers pretty well. Sparta, they're kind of the same. Like, they didn't really get, I shouldn't say they recover well too. They put down their Helot rebellion, but they kind of go back to the way they were. Athens recovers, and they're going to go back to the way they are, and they realize, man, it'd be really nice if we could just take it to Sparta right now. But we signed this truce. We can't go at them directly. So how do we get at them once we start the war back up again, once the truce is up? And this is where they come up with this idea, let's attack anybody in league with them that isn't necessarily part of the Peloponnesian League. Where is Sparta going to get a lot of their food from? Well, they're Helots, yes, but we'll start Helot rebellions later. But hey, Syracuse, all the way over in Sicily, that is actually, they're a major player. They actually were in support of Sparta. We should go over there and destroy them, so that really hurts the food supply that Sparta and their Peloponnesian League armies get. So they vote on it, and they decide, yes, we'll basically come up with there's a whole story behind this. I'm not going to go way into it. They come with this whole pretext of, let's go destroy Sicily. And so they go over there, they lay siege to Syracuse, on the island of Sicily. So notice, this is quite close to Rome. Is Rome around at this time? Yes, they are. They're not the big powerhouse, but they are watching. Or they're not the big powerhouse that they become later, but let's just put it this way. They know what's going on. And they reference back to this. So the Athenians get there to Syracuse. They lay siege. It seems like this is going to be a done deal. They're going to destroy the city. Sparta sees this as an opportunity. Hey, we can go take it to the Athenians, and this time we might be able to turn the tables on them. So they send what little fleet they have, with what little soldiers they can. When I say little, it's not like it's little. It's a few thousand. They send a few thousand soldiers over there, and this is just the part of the story that just is like, what happened? The Athenian fleet is besieging the port. The Athenian army is besieging the city. It seems like all is lost for Syracuse. They don't have enough manpower, basically. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of ships just show up, and the Athenians don't think of any ships that wouldn't be theirs, so they just think it's their ships. And this is, by the way, towards the nighttime, like dusk into the middle of the night. And so these ships just kind of move on through, disembark their guys on them, and it happens to be Spartans. Spartans basically knock on the door and say, Syracuse let us in. Syracusans let them in. And the next morning, the Athenians are now facing down a much more reinforced Syracuse army, which has thousands of Spartans there as well. Now think about this. I talked about how Spartans weren't very effective. You got them going up a ladder, but now you have a Spartan at the top of the wall with Athenians now trying to come up the ladder type deal. Bad deal overall. There's a lot more stories that goes into this. Again, you can look it up if you'd like to, this whole Syracusan war, where it's really just a proxy war between Athens and Sparta. And the Athenian army just gets destroyed. It's like one of those things like just everybody dies, and the people that don't die are sold into slavery. Just a bad deal for the Athenians, just a huge debacle for them. So this is a huge boon to Sparta. It's like, hey, we got them. So they just kind of let that go, and then when the 10-year truce is up, well, the 10-year truce is up, and they do decide to go at it with each other again. Athens, even though they lost that massive army, they had more men to pull from. They had a lot of guys to pull from all their city-states. They were to recoup their losses, you could say. It still would have been nice to have those veterans, though. But they go to war again, like directly with each other. And Sparta, it's like they didn't learn their lesson. They just move up their army again, try to besiege Athens, try to starve them out when you can't starve them out because they still have those protected grain shipments coming in. They can just have the wall to protect them all the way up to Athens. And so Sparta, the Athenians started the pinprick strategy. That's working well again. They're arming the helots again. Like Sparta should have seen this one coming. Like that's what they did the first time. Maybe you should put some things in place to stop it this time, but the pinprick strategy is working just as well as it did the time before. It looks like Athens has this in the bag again. This time, the Spartans do decide, hey, maybe we do need to change. Maybe we need to change something up. So one of the two kings of Sparta at this point is a guy named Lysander, and he decides to make a deal with the devil. In this case, if you're not understanding who the devil is, Persia. Persia is still the overall devil. But he realizes we need one major thing. We need a navy. The only way we're going to stop and beat Athens is if we destroy their navy, which means we need a navy. So he gets a bunch of financial help from Persia. Now, why does Persia help the Spartans, even though Sparta was one of the main reasons why Persia lost in the Persian Wars? Well, it's because Persia is kind of like another Greek city-state where they hate Athens way more than they hate Sparta, and they would love this. They're loving the fact that the Greeks are in a civil war. And I was like, why did we even try to destroy them? They're going to destroy themselves. And if one side's going to win, let's have Sparta win because man, we hate Athens. So they are more than willing to just give massive amounts of money to the Spartans. They build a massive fleet with it, one that can contend against the Athenian fleet, and they go to war. Or I shouldn't say go to war. They have a big naval battle. Here's the problem, though. The Athenians are better. The Athenians know what they're doing, and this first Spartan navy is just smashed. So they ask for more money from Persia. They build an even bigger fleet, one that is bigger than the Athenian fleet, and they get smashed again. If you're getting the idea, like Sparta, it's like they don't learn from their mistakes very well. They don't adapt the way you think they should have. It's almost easy to see they should have adapted a little bit better. So they build another fleet. I hope I'm getting the story right at this point. I think it's even the third fleet gets destroyed. And at this point, even Persia's like, come on, we've given you so much money, just win this already. Sparta's like, well, just give us enough money for another fleet. And so Persia does, but this time, money's running out. Persia, the largest empire in the world still at this time, with massive amounts of wealth available to them, even they're running out of money now, because fleets are, to this day, the most expensive thing to upkeep. To this day, the most expensive part of any military is your navy. So, anyways, they build another fleet, but this time they don't just go out and try to attack the Athenian fleet. In fact, this is where the fun story I like to call, what you call it, like the Python tactic. And this is where, which island are they at? I think they're on the island of Naxos. I could be wrong, but it's an island in kind of the middle North Aegean, where the Spartans come up. The Athenians see them coming. Their fleet was in harbor at the time, and they come out, and the Spartans run away. So the Spartans do not engage in battle; they run away, and the Athenians are like, "Oh, losers, we got them to retreat." Go back to that old adage by the Spartan mom. I guess they got to kill themselves. But the Athenians are feeling pretty good about themselves. But the next day, these Spartans come back. Athenians see them, come out, and the Spartans run away. Long story short, this happens a lot. Spartans come up, Athenians come out, Spartans run away. So it gets to a certain point where the Athenians would see the Spartans coming up, and before they even get on their ships, the Spartans run away. And this goes on, I can't remember how long this goes on, weeks. Weeks and weeks this goes on. The Spartans keep coming up, the Athenians come out, the Spartans run away, and then the Spartans come up, the Athenians don't even come out, and the Spartans still run away. It's like these guys are being chicken until you get to that one day where the Spartans come up, and they just keep coming. But in the Athenian psyche, they're like, oh, they're going to run away. They're going to run away, right? They're going to run away, right? Until the Spartans are actually in the harbor before the Athenians are able to get on their ships, burning the Athenian ships. And that is the destruction of the Athenian navy because they didn't stay vigilant. They didn't do what they were supposed to. They just got used to the Spartans running away. But now that the Athens does not have a navy to protect their grain shipments, what does that Spartan fleet do? They go down, it completes the siege of Athens, Athens is starved out, and Sparta wins the Peloponnesian War. Now the last bit you need to know about this isn't like everybody's like, this is awesome, you won, let's go back and do our own thing, we're not worried about Athens taking everybody over. No. Sparta is like, no, we won this one. So we're going to take everybody over. Look at that map right there. That map is of what is called the Spartan hegemony. Hegemony is basically just the idea that where you control an area and your influence is over all. It's really just like Spartan dictatorship, really. They subjugate everybody, even their own former allies. Like Thebes and Corinth, two of the big cities that joined Sparta in the Peloponnesian War. They're like, all right, great, glad we won, we're out of here. And Sparta's like, no, you're not. It's like Corinth and Thebes are like, yes, we are. We're out of here. It's like, no, you are still part of this. You still belong to this league. We own you type stuff. And Thebes and Corinth Thebes especially tries to put up a fight, and Sparta just destroys them. So these allies, they're former allies, Sparta comes in and just destroys them. And so everybody's already starting to say like, oh crap. It's almost like we just traded one major tyrannical empire for another. Like Athens was being a jerk, yes, but holy cow, Sparta is even worse of a jerk. And the Spartan mindset was, if you guys would just do things like us, you'd be so much better. We know so much better than you. But holy cow, for about the next 30 years, they do keep control of the Aegean world mostly. And they try to just basically force everybody to be like them. And yes, there's a lot of people that aren't happy about that. The city that actually was the most unhappy about this wasn't just you think Athens would be. Yes, they were, but it was Thebes. They felt so betrayed. So they decided to build a military on the same grounds of the Spartan military. They built their own agoge, their own military academy, where they take kids at a young age and then raise them, and they form what is called the sacred band. I believe this is all, I have to read up on this again, I believe this was kind of done in secret, where the Sparta didn't really know what was going on over these years, but these young men grow up, they become what was called the sacred band, and effectively they're a fighting force just as good and just as well trained as the Spartans are. They have a major battle with each other called the Battle of Leuctra. This is a battle that the Spartans should have won. They actually outnumbered the Thebans, but because they underestimated Thebes, and Thebes just did a little bit of an adaptation to the Greek, to their phalanx, where they made one row incredibly deep and used that to push out the Spartan flank. Again, I like to draw this one up on the board. I apologize. You can look this up if you'd like to. Again, there's tons of material just on the internet on this Battle of Leuctra, but Sparta loses. Thebes wins, and that starts what's called actually the Theban hegemony. This isn't like Thebes takes over everybody. This is where Athens gets their freedom. They actually start up the Delian League ×2, part 2, where a lot of the Aegean world is like, okay, Athens will join you again. That map, it's hard to see, but everything that's in kind of like the bright yellow is Athens. Thebes actually gets a lot of people on their side now. A bunch of areas still kind of stay with Sparta, and kind of more of the Spartan homeland area, the Peloponnesian area. Now you kind of have this three-way tie between these powerful cities, Athens, Thebes, and Sparta. Little do they know that they're all about to get jacked, not Sparta actually, but most all the Greek world is about to get jacked by a northern neighbor that they all look at as basically a bunch of degenerates. You know, those losers up there, can you say underdog mentality again in our next lesson? But the Macedonians. And the Macedonians, they produce a guy that has become one of the greatest known figures of all time, a person named Alexander the Great. So, in our next lesson, we're not going to go over Alexander the Great. I'm going to take a little bit of a break and go into the Greek philosophers. But our very last lesson for the entire unit of ancient Greece will be Alexander the Great and the dominance of, his army and his empire. Okay, we'll see you guys later.